I'm going to walk through this 75-inch Hisense U6 Pro the way I would if I were standing in my own living room, trying to figure out whether it's worth the space it takes up and the money I'm about to spend. I know that buying a TV that size feels like a commitment. You're not just picking a screen, you're choosing a focal point for the whole room. And with every new marketing buzzword, mini-LED, 144 Hz, Dolby Vision IQ, AI picture engine, it's easy to get lost in the hype and wonder if any of it actually translates to everyday use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of environment where a 75-inch panel starts to make sense. If you're sitting at least 8 feet away, which most of us do in a typical family room or a modest home theater, the size gives you that cinematic feel without the image looking pixelated. But that also means the room's lighting becomes a real factor. The U6 Pro advertises an anti-reflection, glare-free coating, and that's not just marketing fluff. In a bright living room with large windows, the screen holds up surprisingly well. The mini-LED backlight punches out enough brightness to keep whites clean even when the sun is shining in. I tested it during a midday Netflix binge and the picture stayed vivid without the usual washed-out look you get on cheaper LED panels. Now, if you're a gamer, the native 144 Hz refresh rate is the headline that grabs attention. In practice, it means fast-paced titles like Call of Duty or Fortnite feel smoother, especially when you enable the motion rate 480 setting that Hisense bundles in. The TV doesn't just upsample, it actually drives the panel at the higher rate, so there's less motion blur than you'd get on a 60 Hz screen. Pair that with HDMI 2.0 support for 4K at 120 frames per second. The spec sheet isn't crystal clear on HDMI version, but the TV does accept 120 Hz signals from a compatible console, and you get a genuinely responsive experience. The AI picture engine also has a game mode that disables extra processing, which can be a lifesaver if you're trying to keep input lag low. On the movie side, the Dolby Vision IQ and HDR10 Plus support claim to adapt the picture based on ambient light. In a dimly lit home theater setup, the TV automatically lifts the peak brightness and deepens blacks, giving that pop you expect from premium HDR. I watched a few scenes from Blade Runner 2049 and the neon cityscape looked striking, though the black levels, while respectable, still fell short of true OLED depth. That's the trade-off you get with mini-LED. You gain a lot more brightness, but the localized dimming zones aren't as numerous as the top-tier models, so very dark scenes can still retain a slight halo around bright objects. One of the less talked about aspects is the built-in subwoofer. Most 75-inch TVs either skip a speaker entirely or rely on a thin sound back that barely moves air. Hisense's single driver pushes out a decent amount of bass for a TV of this size, enough to feel a rumble in an action sequence without needing a separate sound system. If your room is medium-sized and you're not an audiophile, you'll be satisfied. However, if you're used to a dedicated home theater receiver or a true 5.1 setup, you'll notice the difference immediately. The low end feels tight but not deep, and dialogue can get a bit buried when the bass ramps up. The smart side runs on Amazon's Fire TV platform, which is both a blessing and a curse. On the plus side, you get Alexa built in, so you can dim the lights, change the channel, or ask for the weather without getting up. The interface is familiar, and most streaming apps you need are there out of the box. On the downside, the Fire UI injects sponsored rows and occasional ads into the home screen, which can be annoying if you prefer a clean experience. Also, the remote feels a bit cheap compared to the premium remotes you see with higher-end brands, and the voice control latency isn't the fastest. Let's talk setup. The U6 Pro ships in a unibody slim chassis that looks sleek on a wall mount, but the weight is non-trivial. You'll want a sturdy mount rated for at least 100 kilograms. Cable management is straightforward because the ports are all on the back, but you do have to deal with a single HDMI 2.0 port that doubles as the main video input. If you're planning a multi-device setup, console, streaming stick, Blu-ray player, you'll need an HDMI switch, which adds another piece of hardware. The TV's AI calibration runs automatically when you first power it on. It scans the room lighting and adjusts the picture, which saved me a few minutes of manual tweaking. Still, I found that fine-tuning the HDR settings manually gave a slightly better result for movies, So a bit of elbow grease is worthwhile if you care about getting the most out of HDR content. Who should walk?